Good afternoon, my fine feathered friends. And if you don't know who that is, if you are watching this video right now, that is you. Yes, that is you. Welcome to my channel. I am simply Helen, and I am a small content creator. And basically, I don't really have a major focus one way or the other. I basically just tend to uh, do videos on things that interest me or things that have happened in my life, in my area. I video gaming, my gaming sessions and things like that. I have three, actually, few, I have three. I have three hermit crabs, and you might find some posts about them, some videos about them, little shorts and things like that. We had Snowmageddon in the beginning of the year, so I have some videos of Snowmageddon in New Orleans. So feel free to check my channel out, look around, and subscribe, like this video. I'd be very much thankful, grateful for that. Yeah, very appreciated. Even if you don't, just by stopping by and checking this video out, any of my videos, I appreciate it. To start out, just to give a little bit of a background, I am from Alabama originally, and I moved to the Metro New Orleans area in October of 1991. I've lived in different places in the metro since then. I lived a little while in the French Quarter, and then some places outside the French Quarter, up until 2005, for obvious reasons. On the morning of August 27th, 2005, it's a Saturday morning. I woke up and I was getting dressed. I turned on my TV. Lo and behold, like all the stations had a press conference with the mayor and with the governor. When I heard hurricane, I stopped and froze and looked, and it was started hearing about this hurricane that was coming at us, and they had mandatory evacuations for certain areas. And our mayor at the time was telling us that they could not order a mandatory evacuation for New Orleans at the time. I'm not sure what the reason was. It was some, I don't know, red tape or laws or something. I am not sure, but I know that this is what he said. Can I prove it? No. But I know what I heard. And yeah, he pretty much said that he was not able to do that at the moment, but he encouraged people to go if they had the means to leave, to leave. Uh, and I was watching it and I'm thinking, this does not sound good. And then, they said that they were going to open up the Superdome, and, people were going in there. I just thought, what am I going to do? I've never driven. I didn't have a car at the time. And if you want, I'll explain the whole never driven thing, which is really not that hard to explain. I didn't learn how to drive before I left and came to New Orleans. And look, if you live in the metro area, it's not really necessary to have a car. There's the streetcars and the buses, and a lot of stuff is within, grocery stores within walking distance. And it was just, if you have a limited income, it just makes more sense to not drive. So I went for, up until 2005, not even worrying about it really. Plus the fact that, you're talking about, you got to buy a car, insurance, and all that stuff, and I didn't have any of that. Since then, I was diagnosed with a medical condition, an inner ear condition called Meniere's syndrome. Some people call it a disease, but anyway, and it causes vertigo and balance issues and things like that, which really prevents me from really trying to drive or anything like that. So there's a short on there. But yeah, so back to August 27th, 2005. So I leave my house and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do. Well, At the time, I was helping with the music at a particular congregation that I was going to. We would always go out to lunch or something afterwards. Um, and they were talking about what they were doing and they were evacuating. And they graciously offered to take me with them. Now, at the time, I had two cats and I had one cockatiel. The problem was that if I went with them, I could not take my pets with me. They were allergic. One of them was allergic to, I don't know birds, but he was definitely allergic to cats and um, the fur and that. And I mean, you know, I couldn't tell them, well, you can't be allergic. Uh, and ultimately, I had a very short window of opportunity there. And I thought, okay, well, I love my cats. I love my bird. You know, one of my babies, my little boy cat, he had been with me from probably about 1995, somewhere around that area. So, he was my little baby boy, and I didn't want to leave him. I really didn't want to leave either one of them. The little girl kitty, I rescued her from a roof once. I was walking down the street, just going to get some ice cream, and I heard this meow, 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 meow. And I looked around, and there I saw her on a roof. It was like she literally knew that I would be the person to call to help her because I have a soft spot for kitties, well, for animals, pets in general. But yeah, so I rescued her. I got her down from the roof, and when I was walking back home, like I went on my merry way to get the ice cream. When I came back, she was waiting for me right there in that spot, and she saw me coming. That was it. So, eventually I wound up taking her in, and she had found out she was pregnant. She had kittens, and I helped her through that. Took care of her kittens with her, and then I got them homes afterwards. And so, there was attachment there with both of them, and my cockatiel, who I had had for quite some time as well. His little mate, his little buddy, little cage buddy. I lost him. That was Coco. I lost Coco. Coco I'd had since, gosh, '92, and this was 2005. And I had lost Coco just a couple of months before Katrina. Anyway, so there's a big like dump right there. You're like, I didn't need to hear all that. I don't know, but there you have it. So I tried to reason out as best I could. The only conclusion that I came to was that if I was staying because my pets were in danger, then I was in danger. I, I just ultimately I made the decision to go, and I left them there. I left them with a lot of water. Unfortunately, the mistake that I did make was that with the cats, I left them a large amount of food, but there was a whole brand new bag that was in the kitchen cabinet that I probably could have left down for them. That I didn't do that, uh, which that would have been helpful. So, but yeah, I did my best to leave them a ton of water, a bunch of food, and honestly, if you don't live down here or if you don't live in an area that deals with hurricanes, you are not going to get this. But um, every year we live with the threat of possible hurricanes. That's just the way it is. It's like in certain areas of the country, there are seasons where there's tornadoes, and you live with that, possibility of getting a tornado and possibly losing your home or, property, things like that. Maybe even, in an extreme case, you could lose life. Um, it happens. In other places you've got earthquake threats, and it's just a part of life. There's nowhere in this world that you can go that you aren't going to face a particular potential some kind of disaster happening. That's Earth. We live on planet Earth. An asteroid could smash into us. Okay, that's less likely than a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake. But I mean, hopefully you get my point. So yeah, I left them. If you hear pause and hesitancy, it's because, um, yes, there was great regret and great horror and just heartbreak in making that decision. So yes, I sometimes I stumble on my words when I'm explaining it, and I feel like I need to explain it. But the thing is that I left them, and there really wasn't much of an option. And at the time, everybody was thinking, no, okay, we'll evacuate, we'll be gone for 3 days, then we'll come back home, and then we'll clean up whatever we need to clean up, and everything is fine. No one, I don't think, I didn't know anyone who thought, yeah, we're going to leave and then we're going to be gone for a month. It just was not even in anybody's, it wasn't even fathomable to anyone at the time. So I had, they brought me home. I had 30 minutes to grab up whatever I could grab, and that's what I did. I just grabbed stuff. This was the day of Walkmans and CD players, so um, if you, if you're a younger if you're in a younger generation watching this, yeah, I had a CD player that I brought with me, with all my CDs. That was I had to have my music. That was a non sequitur right there. Is that right? Non sequitur? What's the word? It's non-negotiable. I'll say that. So I brought that, packed some clothes, shoes. Yeah. So I was in a hurry, and the only shoes I brought with me were the shoes I had on my feet and a pair of flip flops. No sneakers, no nothing else. I had flip flops and the shoes I had on, which I don't even remember what they were. So when I evacuated, that was a regret. Um, so I went. They lived about 10 miles from me, which is another reason why I only had a very small, like 30 minutes to be able to prepare. And then I went home with them. And then we were there. Actually, that night, uh, they had been invited to go do a taping of Wheel of Fortune, of all things. And I went with them and sat in the audience uh, in a taping of Wheel of Fortune, and that was quite the experience. We had, whenever they spun the wheel and the wheel landed on something, they would prompt you to clap and that kind of thing. And I was lucky enough, I'm being facetious, but I was lucky enough to be under the boom. So there was this big boom above my head. And I'm just looking up going, wow, that's interesting. Yeah. But so that was kind of like our little distraction for a little while. And then at 2 in the morning, we loaded up. Actually, I think we loaded up the car before we went to sleep. And then but we got ready, and two in the morning we were out the door. Got on our way, and we did not take the regular route, the hurricane evacuation route. We did not take that route per se. I think there were some areas that was unavoidable to not take the route. But we mainly took a lot of back roads and things like that. So basically we definitely took the scenic route. Yeah, that would be how I put that. We took the scenic route. Um, I think so. We went. went to Texas, and I think it was I were we there at I can't remember if we were there at 6 or if it was later, like 8 or 9. I No, it hasn't been later because we left at 2. Um, the way that we went, it was very little traffic. We did have a couple of times where we were slowed down, but for the most part, it was smooth. It was a very smooth trip uh, to get there. We uh, one of my friends, he had already looked up, where we were going to go, and we settled on a very um, little small community called Livingston, Texas, and that's where we ended up. And that area, it was an interesting area because, well, okay, so we napped in between, like we would pull over and sleep for a little while, and then go on our way some more. Before we got there, we got to this little hotel in Livingston, and there were already right about 300 people or so who were there. Um, Not just in the hotel, but in that area. But the thing about Livingston is it's a very small community, but for such a small community, I'm telling you, they had a they had a representation of every denomination that I could think of church they had there. And if you don't know anything about churches and food, like it doesn't matter what church it is, when they do foods, it's all like they're gonna feed you casseroles and cakes and cookies and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, yeah, so they did. In our lobby, we checked in that morning. And initially, I stayed in the same room with my friends. We had a couple of other friends who joined us later, probably the next day. They stayed, and they horribly regretted staying. And as soon as they could, as soon as it was safe enough for them to, they left and joined us in Livingston. But uh, our lobby, so with all the evacuees, as soon well, all right. So basically, this is how it went. We got there, we got unpacked, everything, we got some food, uh, and then the next, I think it was the next morning. Um, yeah, because I found out on the 27th, the 28th, we evacuated, and then we got there, we got some rest, we got some food. The next morning, we came out into the lobby, and there was some. They had a continental breakfast, I think. I remember that right. And sat down to some breakfast, and they had the hurricane on the television. Um, I mean, it was twofold as to why they had it there. First, because it was a major hurricane and it was hitting, and second, because there were so many people that had evacuated to that area. And I know they knew that we wanted to watch and, keep monitor it and see, how it progressed and what was going on with it. So we sat there and we looked up and we watched, you know, um, as it, made landfall and as it started progressing through. So, um, initially, when we saw, where it made landfall and as it progressed, and then we saw that it had gone past New Orleans, and they were showing video footage of the different places of, um, but it was mainly, as most people would know, mainly the convention center, the French Quarter, the Superdome. Um, us who and even a little bit, I think, in like the Garden District and St. Charles Avenue and those areas. But the majority of us who live outside of those areas, Lakeview and in Mid City, Mid City didn't get much coverage as to what was going on there, any of those areas. So we had no idea, like where I lived, I had no idea what it looked like, or if I had damage in my apartment, or what, I didn't know. Um, but as we were watching, it was unfolding, and we were getting the information just like everyone in the country was, you know. All of a sudden we hear the murmur about water, and all of a sudden the water downtown was getting ankle deep, and then it was getting deeper, and then all of a sudden we hear little like tidbits of words that people were on a roof, and then all of a sudden we started hearing about a levee break, and it just went on, it just plummeted, and went on from there. And the next thing you know, we're just sitting there watching this happen, and we got we're eating breakfast, and we're drinking our orange juice or drinking coffee, having a muffin, or a pastry or an egg or whatever, drinking water, and um, things started to unfold. And the more it did, the more we were just sitting there, you know, in our air conditioning with lights on, and just feeling worse and worse and worse. At least that is how I felt. Um, and the people running the hotel, they were watching us watch our homes, watch our home city, and it just I don't even know what to say. It was a it was a time. It was definitely a period in my life, for sure. Um, there was So all I can tell you are things that happened to me while I was there. And so throughout this time of watching this, um, I mean, it got to be like from the first day, I was there for over a month, like a month and a week. And every day was like you wake up in the morning and you go into the breakfast, into the lobby, and there's breakfast. And then you're watching, what's happening next. And what was what was happening next just kept getting worse. And you're like you at some point you're not even eating, you're just terrified, watching, your eyes are glued to the screen, and you're like crying because you're watching this unfold, and it's your home, like you're it's different, like it hits different when you're watching this stuff, and it's from where you live and where you currently live, and places, streets that you walk down on a daily basis, areas that you are seeing, that you go by, that you walk through or drive through every day or every week, and you're watching this happen, and just it's surreal. Um, so there was a lady who was there, who sat with me every morning at breakfast. And I want to say she was from Germany, but I could be wrong. But this lady, God bless her, she sat with me, and we would talk, and she would ask me questions about New Orleans, where I lived. And then when an area would show up, she would ask me about it, and I would answer her if I knew the answer. um, and we just talked about different things, and I loved her. But this lady, when she went back home, it was her last morning before she went, and she smiled at me, and then she took my hand, and when she took my hand, she pressed money into my hand, and I was just floored, and it's, I'm like, I can't. And she said, no. She said, you take this, and if you can use it, if you need it and you can use it. But if you are okay and you find someone else who really needs it, then basically told me to pay that forward. And then I was just, I was stunned. And then she left, and she went on her plane, she caught her plane, and went home. And I've never seen her since then. I've never seen her again. But I just know that that lady at that time was one of my angels that I needed to see and to talk to and to be around um, while this was going on. So that was another, that was one of many, many, many things that happened like that. That I think, yeah, I think that's where I'm going to go with this video right now. I think that you hear so much about the devastation and things that went on, that happened, and all of the horror, because it was horror that happened, here uh, in the metro area. The people who were trapped here, and couldn't get home. But well, they were home. They couldn't get out. They couldn't get to safety. Who were hanging on by a thread. You know about those stories, those heartbreaking, terrifying, uh, devastating stories. But there are other stories that are of hope, and not just hope for, you know, for a person in a bad situation, but just hope for us as humanity, and especially today with everything that's going on in the world today. Um, those stories are what make me remember that, yeah, there's things going on right now. There are things that have been going on. The things that happen that feel so dark. Um, and I remember that, there are those people, the average person out there that, they are good, and they bring hope to this world. And these stories, I wish that people would tell more of them. Um, and I'm not, look, okay, I'm not a materialistic person, right? Like, I don't sit at home wondering how much money I can get from somebody. Okay, that's not ever anything that I really think about. So some of these stories, am I like, it wasn't about the money for me, for her giving me that. That wasn't even about that. It was just her heart, and how her heart went out to me, and she did what she kept thinking of what she could do. What could she do to help? How could she make it better? And that was the only thing she could think of to make it better. So that's what she did. Um, we would go to get gas, or we would go, uh, we went to different areas. They were offering food for the evacuees. So, we would go to the different places where they had outstretched their arms to us and welcomed us, come in. And we did. And when we would come out, we would find like a 20 on our windshield wiper. Let me tell you something. All right. If you if you went to the French Quarter right now or anywhere around here and you put a $20 bill on your windshield wiper, that thing will not be on there 2 minutes after you leave. It's not going to be there. So we would walk outside and, well, I mean, I don't know how many places there would be where you could do that. But at this time, it's like people would see our license plate, that it would say Louisiana. And, um, they would leave stuff for us. We would come back and it would be there. Um, we would, well, there was a buffet that we went to. It was a local church congregation. Um, and they had offered a buffet for all evacuees. That there were so many places that were doing that a lot of times I say a lot of times that what they did in the month that we were there is they would switch off so that they wouldn't have 15 people, 15 different areas. They would try to make it so that it was so that it would be less for the lack of a better word, less wasteful, more organized, and so that streamlined. If that's a better way of describing it. So yeah, and by the way, it's raining outside right now. So if you hear that rain, that's what's going on. It's August. It's in New Orleans, and in Louisiana. Well, you might as well say in the South, and that's just the way it is. We get rain, and it can be rainy and then sunny and then rainy and then sunny. Yeah, but we walked into this place, um, and we had a buffet. It was a buffet going on. I said that, and I walked in the door, and this little girl came running up to me. I think this girl, if she was older than 9 or 10, I would be surprised. And she came running up to me and she put a $1 bill in my hand. A $1 bill. I mean, right now, that would buy maybe a piece of bubble gum and a gumball machine. I don't know. It doesn't matter, right? Because the thing is that this little girl, what I discovered later on was that this little girl had told some people, these were parents, I don't know who she told, but before anybody came, she said that she felt so sad for everybody who got displaced from the hurricane and all the evacuees and the ones that they showed on TV. And she wanted to help so bad. She wanted to help so bad that she was going to put $1 in the hand of the of I don't of the she said the first person that walked in the door. I don't know if I was the first person or not. All I know is this sweet little girl came running up to me and put $1 in my hand. I mean, how genuine, how innocent, and how just freaking beautiful, freaking beautiful is that, you know? And that's what I'm talking about. And there were so many instances of things like that happened that just those things those things burn in my memory more than anything else that went on. And I am not going to sit here and say that I suffered considerable devastation because I did not. I was very lucky. I went back to my apartment and um, it was a month and a week later. I went back to my apartment and it was. I have a video on it, and it's a very hokey video, but I'll probably post it anyway. I it was that week. We actually came home a week before I actually went back to my apartment. Um, and just and you're probably wondering about the pets because I did not follow up on that. Uh, as soon as I realized how devastating it was, my first thought was on my animals, my pets, my babies, my babies. Uh, so I contacted animal rescue groups that were in the town. I went to their webpage. I called them right away. I gave them descriptions of my animals, and I gave them permission. Look, if you got to beat down the door, do it, to get in there and get them. I need to know that they're safe and they're okay. Um, well, they posted on their site that both of my kitties were rescued. So I thought, okay, well, all right, they're safe. But when I went back to my apartment, I did take a gallon of water with me because there was no water or electricity on the street at all, in the neighborhood at all. Look, yeah, okay. I'll explain it to you like this. Um, the area that where my friends lived, which I now live in this particular area, it did not get as much destruction and stuff. So, uh, and it got up and running again quicker, slower than normal, but quicker than where I lived. Uh, so we went when we crossed from this area to my area where I was living. It was like we just walked into ground zero of a nuclear event. I mean that's there was we couldn't see the streets. The streets was all covered in dirt and stuff, debris and stuff. They had moved, they cleared a lot of debris out where you could drive through, but it was not like a street. Um, the trees had no leaves, nothing. They were bare like dead winter in the north, just completely stripped. Um, and there were cars that were lined up along the streets with windows broken out, and they were just empty, just sitting there. Uh, there were no animal sounds. The birds weren't singing, no chirping. There was none of that was happening. It was just, it was unreal. It was unreal. So, um, got to my building. I lived in I had a four apartment building. There's a quad. The building that I lived in, the house I lived in, it used to be a dairy farm. It was like 250 years old when I lived in this place. And all my apartment out of the four was the only apartment that got no damage in it. I lived upstairs, so I did not get water damage, but my neighbors below, oh, it was devastating for them. Um, the water got about 5 feet deep, and it went in their apartments, and it destroyed everything inside their apartment. The apartment next to mine was vacant, but I actually had moved from that apartment to the apartment that I'm in just a few months before Katrina. That apartment, the roof in the back, the ceiling had caved in. Um, there was a giant tree in the back, and it just completely like, I mean, it's like it just and hit the fence on the opposite side. Did not touch my apartment or anything at all. Uh, as soon as I got to the door, I I didn't even try to open the door. All I did was I was walking up the stairs, and I heard and I, at first I thought this can't be. I can't. I'm not. This is not real. But it was. That was my little boy kitty, and apparently he had hid from the rescuers, and they had gotten another cat and thought it was him. He hid. They got my little girl kitty. They rescued her. They got her out. She wound up, y'all. She got chipped. She wound up in Florida, and they chipped her, and they spayed and neutered her, and did all of her, like, she got a complete veterinarian checkup, and got taken care of and everything, and even got a foster home with a couple of parents, and they had a 10-year-old daughter. And when I called and when I found out, like, I have a picture of her. Oh gosh, she looks like a little gel. It looks like a mug shot. Okay, her picture that they had of her for me to identify her, it it was like a mug shot, right? Um, I told them they were gonna send her back to me, and I thought of her, and I said, you know what? No, because they have a 10-year-old daughter. She is there now, and she's probably gotten settled, and I do not want to disrupt her. And that little girl is probably loving all over her, because I know if I were a 10-year-old girl with a kitty, it's the exact thing that I would do. And I'm going to let her stay there. You let them keep her and let her, be happy. And I let them keep her. My little boy kitty, I got in my apartment and I scooped him up, and he clung like this, like he was never gonna let me go ever. And I picked him up, and I could feel, the weight that he had lost. Um, and he was having a hard time, like, basically like us with a very, very bad sinus infection, and how you're trying to breathe through that. I could tell he was congested. But when I put him down, I put some water out. He drank it. I got some food out. He ate it. So he was eating and drinking fine. Let him eat a little bit, let him drink a little bit, and then we rushed him straight to the vet. And he had a sinus infection. They gave him some fluids. They gave me some antibiotics and stuff for him, and let me take him home. They didn't. They said, well, he's eating and drinking, so that means that he should be fine, and just take care of him, give him these antibiotics, and just if anything happens, he gets worse, then bring him back. And I nursed him to health, and I fed him, and I took care of him, and when I got a brand new apartment, he came with me, and that kitty cat, y'all, I spoiled him rotten for the rest of his life, and I never left him behind again during a hurricane. Never left him behind. Actually, I only had to evacuate one more time while he was still living, and he went with me. You know, um, I did not do that ever again. The bird, unfortunately, I lost my cockatiel. It was hot, and those little birds, they are so fragile. And yeah, I lost the poor baby. Plus, he was aged as well. Um, so that's what happened to the kitty cat. Okay. When I got here, right? My workplace, uh, my workplace, they put out. We would call. They told us, they gave us a 1-800 line to call. I called, and they let us know, wherever we wound up, that all we needed to do was to walk in the store and say, hey, I'm an evacuee, you know um, give me a spot, give me something to do, and they would take us right in. So that's what happened when I got back home. I walked right into my particular store that I was working at. um, and yes, I'm being purposely vague about where I worked, because I don't want to have any issues with that. If I just, maybe that wouldn't happen, but I never know. So yes, all I can tell you is that I worked in a retail drugstore. That's what I can tell you. And there was one, right near where my friends lived, and I could literally like walk there. Um, and then not long after that, I got an apartment that was right across the street from there, and so that's what I did. And so here's how work went initially. Um, I would come in, and I would have people that would walk in, and they were all like us. We were all we were all working through this together, all together as a community. And people would walk in the door, and it wasn't your usual, hey, I want to buy this. Okay, it's 12.35 out of 20. Here's your change. Thank you. Have a nice day. It wasn't conversations like that. It was, I heard their stories. I heard their sadness. I heard their grief. I heard their victories. I heard their devastations. I heard their trauma. You know, I mean, I was like a retail. I hate that word clerk, but I was a retail person, and I was almost like a hey listener, because and I didn't care, I didn't mind because I, I I understood them. I understood, their pain and their struggles. And even though theirs may have been more extensive than mine, I had a coworker who was displaced. He lost his home, and then he lost family as well. I couldn't compare to that. You lost your home and family off of the same event, from the same. I couldn't even begin to say, hey, I relate to that. Ooh, it's thundering outside. Don't worry, we're safe. Okay. But yeah, I couldn't compare. I couldn't even begin. I could say, I'm so sorry that you've gone through this and that you're still going through this. And I'll listen. And that's the best that I could do. Offer any kind of help if there was anything I could do. But yeah, and yeah, the workplace became a place of um, I, I don't I don't know, I've lost the word, but it came like a meeting place almost, and people came in. Um, Initially, uh, when the grocery stores started to open again, well, we had MREs, all right. So when we first got back home, uh, they were giving out MREs. And I don't know if this is the first time that this was done, like as a big thing or not. I know that this is the first time that I know of it, that I ever experienced it or heard of it. Um, they brought out, they would distribute MREs and water, of course, but then we got our water back quickly. But even when we did, they were still distributing MREs. Even when these stores and the grocery stores started to reopen a little bit, they were still giving out MREs because even though the grocery stores were open, the food was limited. So, yeah, we could go get milk, but there was only one milk we could get. There was no like 2%, 1%, Borden, whatever other brand, Klein Peter, whatever. It was one brand, the one milk, whatever milk they had, that's the one you got. There was one bread, whatever bread that they had, that's the bread you got. No like Sunbeam, Bunny bread, generic, store brand. No, whatever bread it was, and everything was simple. They had just simple stuff, bread, milk. They might have some meat or might not have some meat, It was like that. So even when I went to work, sometimes I was bringing MREs with me, to eat at work, or sometimes work would give us MREs. Um, and even when moved into this apartment, I had some MREs, and that it was like that for a while. But uh, and I had a coworker. So this is how I wound up here. Um, and where I how I wound up getting a new apartment, I'd say. Um, my neighbor, well, she wasn't my neighbor at the time. There was a lady who would come in, and she was like just a resource book, man. Anything that happened, any kind of news, anything that was, being distributed, anything like that, that people were doing to help evacuees, whatever. Um, she would run in and give us all the news. So she came to me one day and she told me, look, all right, uh, they have a list in my apartment complex, and you need to put yourself on it and tell them I sent you. Like, okay. Um, so that's what I did. I called them, I got on the list, and gave them her name. And then she came to me one day and she said, look, okay, you need to know. They lost the list, right? They lost the list. You need to call them right now. Tell them you were like you were higher up on the list. Like, I don't know. She's like, I don't know what the number was. Tell them you were on the list. You were in front of the list, and give them my name. I said, okay. So I did that. I gave them. I did exactly what she said. Boom. I got in. Okay. But that's the way it happened. And uh, so I was at work another day, and she came running in and told me that there was a particular furniture company's place store that they were giving free vouchers for evacuees. You could either get a bedroom suit or living room suit or a living room set, and I forgot what else. And you know, I said, thank you. I appreciate that, but I don't. I have those things. Like I have, yeah, they weren't perfect. I had actually, the only thing I didn't have at the time was a bed, because I had got rid of the mattress that I had because it was not good anymore, and I didn't feel like carting it over here, and I thought I could get one later. So I didn't have a mattress. I was sleeping on my couch at the time. But I had a couch. I had a dresser at the time. I wasn't in dire need of those things, and I felt like, I'm not going to do that because there are people who need it more than I do. Oh, I would love to get a new bedroom suit, finally have like an actual bedroom suit, not like mismatched stuff that, I found this, because at the time, the stuff that I had, it was somebody was getting rid of it. And I was like, hey, I'll take that. And, I brought it in my apartment, but they had set it outside. They were getting rid of it. I'm like, I need a dresser and a chest of drawers. So I brought them in. I brought them home with me. So it wasn't like I couldn't have used it, but I, I had something. You know what I mean? I already had something, and I didn't, so I used it. She tried to talk me into it. She said, well, uh, did you lose your place to live? And were you in a flood zone? Yeah. And did you lose your apartment, your home? Yeah. Well, then you qualify. I'm like, no, no, no. And I mean, maybe it would have been okay. I don't know. But I know that at the time, I could not in good conscience do it. So I didn't do it. So there you go. Take that however you will. It's fine. Um, but yeah, that was, why does my, okay. Apparently, I don't know how to spell webcam. So my OBS in sources, I, I tried to put webcam as my source, and I spelled it WEBCOME. I can't spell. But yeah, and okay, so I've talked for quite a while now, and um, I will likely make a part two. This is a part one, and part one came out way longer than I intended it. So um, thank you for listening and for watching, and yeah, as we remember 20 years of 20 years ago. 20 years ago today is when it started for me. Started for everybody, uh, except for Florida, because Florida got hit before we did. But yeah, um, thank you. And if you like this video, please like it and subscribe. I would love to have you. And be on the lookout for part 2. And I'm going to try to like make a video with some pictures and things that I have. Thank you so much. Have a great day.